University student debt is a weight on the backs of millions of people at a time when so many are already carrying so much. Young people often carry the highest HECS debts and are the hardest hit by the cost of living crisis. HECS-free payments cut into their take-home pay right when they need it the most. So while the 20% reduction in HECS put forward by the government is welcome, we must acknowledge that this is shaving a bit off the edges and calling it a day. But here's the truth. For so many, the mountain of debt will still be there. The burden is still there. The injustice is still there. Labour had and still has the opportunity in this Parliament to finally lift that weight, to enable a generation to no longer have this ever-increasing student debt looming over them. And yet they are choosing not to. Wiping student debt and making university free is possible. And at the very least, making the current system fairer is definitely possible. The only thing in the way is political will. Back in 1974, the Australian government abolished university tuition fees, with the goal of opening up access to higher education regardless of a person's income or background. Then, in 1989, HECS as a system was introduced, a deferred payment system where people pay back through the tax system once they have started to earn enough. Now, I know that many in my generation deeply appreciate accessing HECS. Without it, university wouldn't have been an option for them. But what we did not see coming was how that debt would spiral. How, even after making regular repayments, many would find their debts bigger, and at the end of the year, you would look at that balance and sit there in shock that it had grown larger. This is simply not fair. If this government had made gas corporations pay their fair share of tax, just that one change would raise billions, enough to cancel all student debt, enough to make university free for all, enough to lift the weight of student debt from everyone. The cost of the entire HECS debt, all of it, is just a fraction of what this country gives away to fossil fuel corporations and tax avoiders. So don't tell us that it's impossible. Don't tell us that it's too hard. Let's talk in real terms about what this actually means. Because going to university used to be an opportunity available to all Australians. It used to be about aspirations, interests, and a path to building a better future. Now, it is a conversation about debt. It is a calculation about how much debt you are willing to accumulate if you think the financial risk will pay off in the end. That's not a fair system. That's a broken promise. Free education isn't a radical idea. It's a fair one. It's a policy that opens doors, levels the playing field, recognises that education is a public good, not a personal debt. In the meantime, there are many other steps that we could take towards fixing inequities, like wiping out indexation altogether, or at the very least, no longer waiting until the end of the financial year to deduct compulsory repayments from your HECS debt balance. Ensuring people are charged the least indexation possible. It's time to give people back the freedom to choose the higher education pathway that works for them, without the threat of a decades-long financial hangover. And while we are on the topic of university, we know that disabled people are underrepresented in higher education. And governments have received report after report that action is needed to make our universities more inclusive. We need to change the system. We need to build a system that focuses on the whole of the student, where we support people in their learning and also in finding affordable student housing, assistance with finding employment and adequate income support, as opposed to simply enrolling disabled students into a course and hoping they succeed. I've heard from disabled people across the country about the immense barriers they face in accessing university education. These aren't isolated incidents. They reflect systemic failures by both institutions and by governments. And these failures have real and often devastating consequences for our community. Here are just some of the experiences that have been shared with me. A deaf student requires captioning to support their learning. The university's solution? Inaccurate, AI-generated captions riddled with errors, or in some cases, no captions at all. Others were told at the time of applying to university that Auslan interpretation would be provided, only to find that those supports never materialised. Some students who require note-taking didn't receive that support until weeks into the semester, putting them at an immediate and unfair disadvantage. Wheelchair users have been unable to access classrooms because ramps have been blocked off for construction or lifts were out of order. In one case, a student was forced to take a 40-minute detour across campus just to get to class. Neurodivergent students are constantly having to advocate for themselves against staff who are poorly trained and unwilling to implement approved access plans. This is not just a failure of policy, it is discrimination. There must be a change in this system. There must be inclusion. I know that many in our community are pleased to have some relief through the government's HECS changes. But we have a lot of work to do to make universities inclusive, accessible and affordable.
Authorised by Steele-John, Australian Greens, Canberra.